Well, here we go. Welcome to the Profit Tool Belt podcast, just for builders, remodelers, and GCs. Now, if you serve commercial or residential customers and you're interested in the business of the contracting business, and you're also at a place where you're excited because you're already doing 1 or 2 million a year in sales, but you're wise enough to know you need some new answers to old problems, then you, my friend, are ready. Because this show is all about getting to the next level by working smarter, not just harder. Today's guest is going to be Taunya Woods Richardson. We're going to be talking about money management for wealthy contractors. How's that for a juicy topic? Here's why this episode's important. Wealthy contractors look at their numbers completely different than struggling contractors do. Number two, there are so many numbers to look at, it's hard to know which numbers are important and which ones you can just ignore. And number three, and this one holds true for me especially, is most of us didn't grow up at a kitchen table where we talked about money. We didn't talk about the language of money and the rules of money. And actually, we're going to do that today. I had to go out and seek that myself. And I'm actually really happy that I found Taunya and that I was able to bring you this message because it's not normal language, unfortunately. You see, there are simple systems to help you run this business, make the money you deserve, live the life you want. And those simple systems give you the quiet confidence to take this company wherever you want to get it to. If I had to summarize everything for you, this podcast is about the mindset of growth and success for you as a business owner. Now, I just said mindset. So speaking of mindset, I got a couple of dad jokes for you. Now, why dad jokes? Why bad jokes? And why dad jokes poorly delivered with poor timing? Well, I want to get you laughing. And I want to get your mind open to hear what Taunya has to say. And jokes are a great way to open your mind, set you back, set you at ease. We're all normal. We're all the same. You're going to use these at golf this weekend, maybe at a family event, at a church event. You're going to try them. Maybe something just to get the kids to giggle. Nothing better than the sound of children laughing. But I'm going to do this in the format of David Letterman's top 10 list. And just because I said that, you already know how old I am. And if you understood that, then I know how old you are. So here you are, David Letterman's top 10 list. Have you heard the one about the fun accountant? Me neither. Welcome to the accounting department where everybody counts. I want you to consider this. A fine is a tax for doing wrong. A tax is a fine for doing well. Number three, what do you call an accountant with an opinion? An auditor. Number four, how does Santa's accountant value his sleigh? The net present value. Number five, why are accountants so cool, calm, and collected? They have strong internal controls. Sorry, folks, I got a break on this. That one's not that funny, even for me. What do you call a trial balance that does not balance? A late night. How many of us do our own bookkeeping, are still doing our bookkeeping and know that one? What do accountants suffer from that ordinary people don't? Depreciation. Number nine, they say that two things in life are unavoidable: death and taxes. At least death only happens once. And number 10, what's an accountant's idea of trashing his hotel room? Refusing to fill out the guest comment card. There you go. That's the David Letterman version of the top 10 of accountant jokes. Listen, it's accounting jokes. You couldn't have expected them to be that good. Taunya, you're a wonderful guest. Sorry, but you're on the finance side. We had to do this. Listen, I host this podcast because one day I would be very proud to be your business coach. As a matter of fact, I have a team of business coaches that I've personally hand-selected and trained. I have very high expectations for the people that join my team, and I'm proud of every single one of them. With that being said, let me go into business coach mode for you right now. I have two very simple action items for you. Number one, I'm going to challenge you. In this episode, you're going to hear something, you're going to learn something, or realize something. Whatever it is, I want you to take action in the next 24 hours. And then I want you to pay attention to how that improves your business or your life. And then number two, I want you to think on this idea. It's a simple idea. Are you happy being a contractor who feels stuck at 1 or 2 million a year? Or are you ready to learn the steps to get you to the next level? And see, by the end of today's episode, you, my friend, will know the answer. So let's get to it. Taunya, you're already making fun of me. We haven't even started the episode and you're mocking me in the countdown. I love it.
You gotta have fun.
You got to have fun. Over, I don't know how many episodes I've done between both. 400. You're the first person who's mocked me on the countdown.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm going to take it out on you the rest of this
uh-oh.
interview.
Oh, be
No,
kind. Be kind.
are you kidding me? We need to hear from you because you're going to talk to us about money management for wealthy contractors. I'm happy to have you on the show.
Uh-oh. Well, hopefully nobody ran away on that title. Who
No,
wants to talk about money management, right? Oh,
yeah, well, I think everybody who listens to this show wants to talk about money management. Although, what's funny or interesting is when I'm having first phone calls with people, we're like, tell me about your business. What are you doing? What do you want to be doing? They never get to the point where they say, hey, Dom, I'd like to make more money.
yeah.
And I have to bring up, hey, would you like to make more money? They're like, well, I mean, now that you bring it up.
A lot of guilt around it, isn't there? Like I find a lot of people are resistant. I mean, that's why we're in business,
Mm,
really. I know people want to have impact and give back and make the world a better place. And, but at the end of the day, if we're not making money in business, right, then we're in trouble. So
yeah. Well, what a great segue. Taunya Woods Richardson, who the heck are you anyway? And how is it you come to be speaking to all these forward facing contractors all over the world?
oh, Dominique Rubino. Well, let me answer that. Hey, you know what? In a nutshell, I'm just going to say, um, entrepreneurship is my wheelhouse. It's where I've spent the last 30 years of my life. My family, actually, I come from a family of developers and accountants, so really interesting background there.
Mm,
I've had 8 businesses. Uh, some I've been able to sell, some have just petered out, but it really wasn't until it was about 2011 that I became a lender and
mm.
being able to look at a lot of cash flows and business plans and look at a lot of credit reports. And that's when it really hit me that holy crumb, right? Like this is a silent
Nice
epidemic.
save, by the
Thank
way.
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you
That was
very much.
great. Well done.
Thank you. So yeah, in that space, I went back and I understood financial modeling and really made it my mission to empower founders to really understand their numbers, not to abdicate, right, to bookkeepers
Mm,
and accountants, but to delegate out to them. And at this point, I'm really lucky. We get sent a lot of business through national banks, specifically
mm.
through business owners or for business owners who are struggling in their numbers, looking to borrow money, but don't necessarily how they're going to apply those funds and get those funds paid back,
Ah,
right? Because that's the whole idea of borrowing. Borrow money, make that money make more money for you, and then start multiplying, rinsing and repeating that process.
so if I understand you correctly, the banks are saying, hey, we're interested in lending to you, Mr. Company Owner or Mrs. Company Owner, but you should go talk to Tanya's team because we want to make sure you know how to pay us back.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I mean, God, there's so many places I want to start. And
Mm.
and well, let me start at the where I care about because this is about wealthy contractors. What do the wealthy contractors do that the ones who struggle don't do?
They plan for net profit. Like it is actually their forethought, right? It's that net profitability, the bottom line, net
Mm,
income, EBITDA, whatever you want to call it,
right,
that intentionally gets planned for before everything else. And then when it comes in, it gets set aside. So it's not the afterthought, it's the forethought.
right. We hear that so many times. I mean, a lot of people here listen to or have read the book Profit First by Mike
Mhm.
Michalowicz.
Awesome book. Yeah.
Isn't it great? Because it,
Yeah.
it make profit and expense, plan for it upfront,
Absolutely.
right? And I mean, you came from a family of developers. They're not going to develop a piece of land unless they know what the profit is going in. And
Yeah.
then they manage the heck out of that project to make sure they get more than they thought.
Yeah. And mitigate the risk throughout the way, right?
Yeah.
Which a lot of developers, a lot of contractors don't necessarily mitigate their risk throughout. So yeah, protecting that. Because basically that net profit, we started off this conversation talking about guilt that some people feel around making money. But
Mm,
what net profit really is, and I feel like a lot of founders kind of get this when they hear it this way. Net profit is a number that doesn't pad your pocket. It actually pads your balance sheet, right? It's that net profit that goes over to your balance sheet and
mm,
goes into a column called retained earnings,
right.
right? Or shareholder equity. So the first role of net profit is really about ensuring that you're building up your emergency fund. So
Mhm.
retained earnings for emergencies. And then once you get there, then you can start reinvesting that number. So it's not just about, oh, make net profit so everybody gets dividends. It's actually make net profit to create your emergency fund and then to become your own bank and reinvest it so that you can build up that business and create shareholder value for everyone, for your crew, for your family, for your
Right.
clients. That's what it's all about.
For your family members. Yeah. Whoever else is following you in the business, we need that net profit. And it's funny that we have to talk about why profit is okay because, you know, we've got a number of tools that we use here. One of them is the 1 hour calculator, which everybody on this show knows as the go back report. But it's amazing how much goes into understanding what it costs for 1 hour of running my business. Just 1 hour. And one of the ways that I like to explain it to people is if I'm going to build your deck, let's just use something like a deck, because we can all visualize that, right? You're actually renting my company to build your deck. You're renting my company to do that. And then I'm going to buy materials and I'm going to, there's a markup on doing them, bringing you those materials and putting them together, where we take big pieces of wood and we cut them into little pieces of wood. We put them together into pretty wooden things, right? But you're renting my company to do that. And
Yeah.
that's the interesting part that I think a lot of us forget is that net profit goes just like you would when you're renting a piece of machinery from the rental house.
I love that. I love that. So you're getting your clients to best understand what their hourly rate is all in for the work that they're
Yeah.
doing. Yeah,
Including
brilliant.
net profit, including
Love
burden
it.
rate.
I love it.
And it's here we are getting all excited talking about numbers. We have to
Everybody
get a
hang with
life.
us. Hang with
We have
us.
to get it. Yeah, we have to get a life, right? So we started by asking, what are the things that wealthy contractors do that the not so wealthy contractors don't do? And you right away you said, look, they think about their profits. They think about net profit. What about gross profit? Because I drive a lot towards gross profit.
Well, with love, I share with you. A lot of people do for sure. And, when you're out networking, that's what everyone always talks about. I
Mm.
jokingly say, because that's usually where there's money left at the end of the day is in the gross profit margin, but not the net. But, what I can say is when it comes to gross profit, here's where I see most business owners losing all of their profitability. It's
Mm.
actually in what I call the Bermuda Triangle of Budgets.
Oh,
It's this space that's made up of getting crystal clear on your key revenue streams, right? So revenue stream, it's not about, it's not about I do construction or I do cabinets or I do siding. It's about understanding the projects that typically drive 80% or more of your revenue, right? So you
mm.
start thinking a different way. It's not about what you do, but how are they bundled? Right? Like who is the audience? What is that project going to look like? Small, medium, large. That's actually key to lock in
Mm-hmm.
on that first. And then the other piece, and I know this gets talked a lot about in contracting, but again, we do it a different way, and that is the direct costs
Uh-huh.
per revenue stream. So if I'm working with a cabinet maker and they go, yeah, you know what, we build cabinets, I sometimes it can take a couple of hours to break down, let's talk about your major projects. And then they realize, oh, you know what? We do major projects for the hospitality industry, like for
Right.
example, a Starbucks. We actually do major projects for pharmaceutical companies, so commercial work across the country, right? And then we actually do major projects for education. So each one of those projects comes with a different skill set that's required because the industry requires a different skill set in that specific line of work with cabinetry.
Sure.
So then as we get the revenue stream done, then we actually dial in the direct cost per revenue stream. So when it comes to direct costs, a lot of founders, a lot of business owners typically always just think, we've got all of our materials, we got all of our subs, right? Might have
Mm-hmm.
some freight and surcharges over here. But we make sure that the founder is dialed in on the direct cost per project. So you talked about burden. I wasn't sure. Is that debt burden? Is that what you were
Oh,
referring to?
labor
Labor
burden,
burden.
all the soft costs associated with an hour
Yeah.
of an employee's time,
Okay.
right? All
Awesome.
those.
So
Yeah.
brilliant. So that's definitely one thing that we do. So for example, in direct costs, if we're looking at materials, we're and one thing I'd encourage all of your listeners to do is go back to your supplier costs, right? Because those change so regularly that
Mm.
if you're using a list that came out last year ago, all those little pennies are
Oh my
starting to
gosh.
add up, right? So
Yeah. The profit
material
leaks.
costs landed. right? Making sure that that's taken into account. Materials are usually pretty good. I would say most contractors are good with those, but those little pesky details like merchant fees, right? So if someone's paying you with a credit card, there's 2.79%, right? That usually don't get budgeted in direct costs.
Right.
Usually most contractors have those costs down in their operating expenses or indirect costs. If a contractor is using debt to buy material, then let's account for the interest carrying costs on that debt. 11%, 11.93. Those details, like once you really start to dial in on the true cost that you are out of pocket to actually do that job, most founders realize that they're not charging, they're not pricing.
I find that most contractors don't charge enough. And quite often because they feel that they're already at the top of the market. They're getting price resistance from customers.
I know. Isn't that the truth? I hear that all the time too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the problem is I think they're listening to the wrong people.
They're not listening to your podcast, because I know you've had some amazing guests on speaking about that. But you're right. So that's the third piece. So your revenue stream, your direct cost per revenue stream, including labor, right? So your contribution labor, including for administrative tasks. So one of your guests too, Steve Cedarquist, did I get that right?
Steve Cedarquist, that's right.
Thank you. He talked about this, like, how long is it going to take you to build an estimate? How long does it take you to do the pitch? How long does it take, like, build those into your direct costs, right? As you go forward. So then the third piece is pricing. So the work that we love to do with our clients is what we call a weighted pricing model, weighted pricing process. So we not only take into consideration what the competition is charging, but we take into consideration what we call the decision-making criteria of the customer. So what does the customer most value in the work that is going to be done? And this is going to be huge. This is a little bit of a cheat. I don't know if we should talk about this on a national podcast, because this is
absolutely huge. Now everybody's turning it up and they're making their dog stop barking.
So as an example, when you think about criteria for the customer, typically in builds, whether it's commercial or residential, but let's just say it's a residential home build, one of the biggest frustrations of a homeowner is that construction's never done on time and it's never done on budget, right? It always goes over. Yeah,
over time, over budget.
Always. So one of the things that our client did, I won't mention any names because I'm going to get in trouble, but they actually said, okay, if we know that that's going to be their issue and we're going to build our brand and our reputation of always coming in under budget, at least, what they did is in their direct costs, they budgeted for a refund check. And at the end of the project, they then went back to the customer and said, you know what, we came in under budget. So in addition to the thank you gift for trusting us to build your home, here's your check for $4,372.63 because we came in under budget.
Oh my gosh.
And that
the goodwill that generates.
That was their marketing. That's all they had to do. The referrals that came out of that, but they budgeted it for it in their direct costs.
And they managed the heck out of the project to make sure.
Right. Well, and they might have gone over a little budget, right? Might have gone over budget by a bit, but because they budgeted in that 4,000, they had already factored in that was going to be going back.
What a great idea. And I think, I mean, what do you think the customers said to their neighbors and their aunt and their mom? And
yeah, exactly. Unheard of. So that was the thing. That's the thing when it comes to your weighted pricing process then, is to understand what the customer is going to most value, right? So we usually pick anywhere from, 4 to 6 pieces of criteria, and then the founder's going to score themselves. And obviously, because we can't show it here, but what I will say is most contractors on a scale of 1 to 5, right? So out of competitors' pricing, a 1 is the competitor who's charging the least, and the 5 is the competitor who's charging the most. I find that most of the people that I have worked with are typically charging about a 2.5 on that scale.
Oh.
And when they actually figure out their value and the value that they're delivering, there usually should be anywhere from a 3.5 to a 4.5. So they're losing all of those points. But when they do that exercise, they're then able to say, here's the value that I'm bringing to this project specifically. And you were so brilliant in one of your podcasts. You mentioned this in marketing. You said it's not what you're telling, it's not what you're saying, it's who you're saying it to,
Mm,
right? And that's what comes out of that weighted pricing process is you realize I need to speak to people who value this score, who actually
that
want this. I'm speaking to people who don't want it, and that's why they're not willing to pay for it.
and that it's funny that you say that, because when I was saying they're listening to the wrong people, when they're getting price objections, they're listening to the wrong people. They should be listening to us. And I think, and you and I know each other from way back in another
Way back.
industry altogether, which is so funny that here we are today. But there is an expected conversion rate. I don't want to sell to every single person I talk to. If I am, I'm doing something wrong.
Or you're
I need
desperate.
to sell premium pricing, deliver a premium service, and have people absolutely thrilled with what we do. It doesn't matter what we're selling. And so you mentioned kitchen cabinets, but it could be you're building pergolas and decks. You could be doing roofing,
Roofing,
HVAC,
right? Anything.
lawn services. It simply doesn't matter. But if you're delivering that kind of value to the right people, they will in turn say, well, this is great value. And I'd use you
Yeah.
again and use you again and refer you to my friends.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's a great point. Just in like what is the value that they are most seeking, right? So commercial clients is about getting it done on time. Is it about safety? Is it about making sure everyone's got their permits and
Mm.
insurance? Is it about protocols? Is it about, right?
Communication, which
Yes,
by the way is free.
yes,
And now it's a headache because you got to call, you got to text, you got to email, all those things. But what a lot of contractors on the commercial side want is communication. Nobody likes surprises. And the people that like surprises the least are the commercial buyers. They're trying to build a restaurant or build a bank or a coffee shop. They don't want surprises. They want somebody who's got a preset communication schedule, sticks to it. They're always in the know. Even if they're going to be late, they know they're going to be late 3 weeks in advance. There's
yeah.
no surprises. Nobody likes surprises.
Isn't that true, Dom? Like it's, just working with a client the other day where it's the first time that they actually really mapped out their progress-based billing cycle, right? Their completion phases.
Right.
And they said, okay, 22% here, 22% here, 36 here. Like they had added it up. And they said the difference that that made to actually figure out their schedule in advance,
Mm-hmm.
to communicate that to the client, and then to communicate it to all their subtrades to say, here's when our project is supposed to be done, like what percentage is supposed to be done along the way. Here's
Right.
when we expect you to be there, and here's when we expect you to invoice us, and here's when we pay, right? To that whole piece about communication, and then being able to, communicate if something is off the rails,
Right.
communicating that up front, and making sure everyone's aware of it. Yeah,
So
communication is
are
key.
you saying that wealthy contractors run it like a real business?
Well, I
I'm
would
being cheeky
hope
right
so.
now. I'm being cheeky right now. That's me
They're
being
all
cheeky.
real. They're all real, but they do run it like a well-oiled machine, right? A best in
Yeah.
sector performer. And especially if that's who you're doing business with, right? If you're doing business with one of those key companies, they expect you
Isn't
to mirror their protocol.
isn't that true? We talk about wealthy contractors. This is money management for wealthy contractors. Well, if a wealthy contractor is selling to a wealthy homeowner, that wealthy homeowner probably works in some sort of, let's say they're working at a company, a blue chip company, whatever it is. Their day is made up of meetings with agendas, people with accountabilities, people with professional presentation skills, people who are good communicators, all of those things. And so when they come home and they want to suddenly get a new roof on their house, or they want somebody to build them a new home or an ADU, an accessory dwelling unit, whatever you call it, wherever you live, wouldn't they love for the contractor to say, this is our communication schedule. These are the expectations. This is our easy to understand agreement. These are our progress payments. This is the team you're going to be seeing. So it looks a lot like how they work. And they go, these guys are easy to do business with because I understand them.
Right, Dom? Yeah. You
Right.
mirror their personality, right? They become more comfortable with you the more you mirror who they are, their
Yeah.
behavior. Yeah, bang on.
I so let's summarize and wrap up because I know you've got another meeting. But I have to tell you, in the short time that you've been on here, I'm stunned with what you've already given us on these insights. It's clear that you know what you're talking about. And so this is all me softening you up for another
Good to
invitation
hear.
back.
Good to hear. Yeah.
Another another invitation back at some undisclosed point in the future, Taunya. Um, if somebody's listening to this episode, what's the one thing that you hope they absolutely take away and start doing differently based on this episode today?
I would say dial in on your direct costs. Like don't take them for granted. There's been so many changes, inflation, right? I know there's money that you are leaving on the table by not doing that one thing alone per revenue stream.
Okay, and now I'm going to role play with you, but I'm not good with numbers. I don't know my numbers. I don't even know where to start.
Call me.
Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. It's, you know what, I totally get it. Numbers can be intimidating, overwhelming. One of the things that I do offer is a free financial diagnostic.
Oh,
It will go through your numbers together, and in 30 minutes, we can pinpoint right away where you're making money and where you are losing money. And it's when we finally understand what's working, what isn't working, then we can start building a financial plan going forward. And first and foremost, starting with that net profitability, right? Like you knowing what those numbers are. So yeah, I would recommend that free financial diagnostic. Happy to do that with you. And I don't bite. I
okay. Good
promise.
to know. It was a big
You were very
question on my
quiet
mind.
there,
I
doll. I
didn't
don't
know.
know.
I
I
didn't know what to
swear I
say.
don't, but
I didn't. I was just waiting for the end of the sentence. Um, well, thank you. And as we wrap up, we'll have to let people know how to reach you. But you've got, I went to your website, obviously, as part of the
yeah.
research that my team and I did here. And there's tools on your website. There's quite a bit of information there on how you and your team work with contractors to do these things. But why do banks choose to work with you? Why do they refer people to you?
I'm really happy that they do, actually, because obviously
Well,
outside of money, but really as a lender, that was one of my biggest pet peeves because lenders will lend money, but in exchange, they take promissory notes or put liens against personal assets,
mhm.
right, of the founder without going, you're actually hooped. I've looked at the numbers. They don't look that great. You don't know what you're doing, but here's 250,000. Good luck to you. And we'll just take the house when you can't repay. So I love that lenders are really, this fiscal stewardship and responsibility
Mhm.
and getting the founders to really understand what their numbers look like. Because to be honest with you, the plan never goes according to plan. Like it never does,
No,
right? It's not like, oh, month after month, it all lines up
it,
exactly as my cash flow said. So these lenders want to know that their money, regardless of what circumstances come up, that the founder knows how to adapt, that the founder understands how their numbers are adding up. So if
right.
inflation goes up, what happens with the numbers? If freight and fuel surcharges go through the roof like they did months ago last year, the lender wants to know that the founders know what they're going to do in that window of crisis, right? How are we
Yeah.
going to address the situation? So I'm glad more lenders are sending their founders to us for that reason, because at the end of the day, the founder pays the price, the entrepreneurs pays the price,
Yeah.
not the lender.
Yeah. No, the lender's always insured on their end.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's interesting. You and I come at this from a very different perspective. I come at from an operational side, sales, marketing, operations, growth, strategy, but all of those things lend back to a plan. And you come at it from the financial side, but we both end up at the same place. Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
And we all know that a plan never survives first contact with the enemy, to use a military term. But unless you have a plan, you don't know how to deke or duck or duke. You
Yeah.
just don't know what to do. And so you're stuck there. You're like, and the
Yeah.
steamroller is coming slowly but surely.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
You're right. They're paralyzed, right? And avoidance and all that stuff that happens. And I love that you said the plan, because that's really what your you know I don't want to get too technical, but your cash flow forecast, right, is also
Mhm.
known as a budget, and it is just a plan. And it's usually the plan that your business plan is then built on, because it's showing how you're going to be financially viable. And at the end
Yeah.
of the day, that's what we need to achieve in business. Otherwise, we won't stay in business.
Yeah. So there's a lot of people out there that they want growth. The only reason to listen to this show first is because we've got horrible dad jokes. So they are delivered very badly but consistently.
Some decent ones there. There's some decent
I
ones.
heard them. But also because this is about the business of the contracting business. It really is. And there's not a lot. I don't know if there's any other places to get guests like you who are talking about these kind of things that wealthy contractors need to know about. So I'm happy people are here because we don't learn this at our kitchen table. You don't learn this in your algebra class in grade 12. You kind of have to go out there, and literally the school of hard knocks is what gets you here. And then a teacher like you shows up and says, well, here's what you do. Here's the plan. Here's the little form. Fill out the form and it'll tell you the number. And then, people like you and I come along and say, okay, see that number there? We can tweak that number by doing these two things. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because we can't reinvent it. Nobody should expect that they can invent the wheel themselves every day.
Yeah, it's exhausting. There's no way.
It's exhausting. That's a good way to say it.
Well, and numbers all add up, right? That's the thing about numbers too. There's no gray. They're black and they're white, and they're not emotional, and they help to pave out, what your choices are. So that's, in what you're just saying there with a founder, we don't make the decisions for founders, right? It's like, okay, so what happens if you do option A? Right? What happens if you continue to carry on at this price without making that adjustment? What will your numbers look like? Or you have a choice on what happens if you decide to adjust your pricing. What happens then in option B, right? And the numbers with the right calculators and, software, and there's loads of it out there, they'll just show you the consequences of which door you decide to choose, right? Because you always have choices.
That's such a heavy word. The consequences
I know it
of
is.
your
Sorry, that
actions
sounded a little intimidating.
No. I mean, listen, one of the consequences don't have to be negative. The consequence could be you just bought a bigger boat. The consequence could be you built your own facility instead of leasing or renting all the time. Those are consequences as well of making the right decisions based on, I like how you said it, money. Money is cold, but talking about money gets hot. Why? They're just numbers. They don't care. 7 is a 7, right? The 6 is a 6. What's one of my dad jokes? An 8 is just a 0 with a belt. It's just a number. But when I can control the number, I just have that much more confidence every day. Anyways, listen, we're going to have you back for sure, because I have a feeling we've only scraped the surface of the wisdom of Taunya. But you mentioned being able to help people. If somebody wants to reach you or have questions, how do we find you in the big wide world?
Absolutely. I think the best way to get in touch with me directly is probably just to fire me a text. So should I give the number now?
Yeah,
Put
sure.
it in the notes. Yeah. 306-713-8321. And if you just want to put in that subject line, you can put FD for financial diagnostic, and happy to reach out and either work through a diagnostic or just talk about the Bermuda Triangle of budgets. And, I'm happy to meet you wherever you're at listening at this podcast. But let's make sure we build up that bottom line, and that you are building a business you can hopefully eventually, perhaps, maybe sell one day down the road, right? And make up that retirement number.
All day
You've
long.
got a huge asset there. Huge asset.
Yeah. Oh no. When you're running the business like a business, people want to buy it.
Yeah.
Then we have other guests who talk about that stuff too. I know. Exciting.
Exciting.
Taunya, thank you for being on the show. I think we are going to have you back. I like the way you broke down the estimating discussion and understanding the cost. So that'll probably be the topic we invite you back on.
Okay. Would love it. Thanks so much, Don, for inviting me.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Have a great day.
Ciao, everybody.
Okay. Bye. Well. What did you learn from Taunya? And what can you put in place? That was a juicy episode with a lot of really important money mindset things that most people never learn about. I mean, it's sad, isn't it, that you have to come to a podcast like this that happens to specialize in construction and contracting to find an expert like Taunya, talking to somebody like myself, who's an entrepreneur in the contracting trades, just to have this conversation. Why isn't this a normal conversation? But these are the things we talk about here, because we understand we're running a business. We understand that when we sign a contract with somebody, we're putting our name to that. That's why we strive so hard to have great quality. We care about our people. We care about everybody. Most of us at some point in the business have been the last one to get paid to make sure everybody else is taken care of. And then the first thing in the morning, somebody comes at us and tries to bite us in the neck. And they don't realize what we go through to run this as a business. Myself, you're the people I serve. I know that that's the kind of things you go through because I've gone through them myself, and I've struggled and I've learned, and I continue to learn to be a student of business success, of mindset, of listening to people like Taunya and other guests that we've had on here so that I can grow forward in my business. And I hope you can do the same. Hey, before we get to solving a common problem for those of us running trades businesses, I want to read you a couple of comments that have come in from people over the last week or so. Pretty interesting. There's 3 that I grabbed. We get lots of them. I just chose these 3. This is a really interesting one from a guy named Nick. Hey, Nick. Nick says, I just finished listening to your podcast, so I pulled into a parking lot to send this email to keep myself accountable and make sure I got it done. Otherwise, I do the typical, I'll call them later and never get around to it. Looking forward to talking. Nick. So thanks, Nick. I appreciate you doing that. And listen, successful people take action. So Nick was listening to the podcast. Thankfully, he pulled into a parking lot to send us that email. He was getting one of the free downloads, which is something we offer all the time. But he did it. Like, he realized, look, now's the time. I need the info. Instead of just continuing on down the highway, let me pull over for 2 seconds and send the email. And then he gets the information he needs. And Nick then moves forward one step on the game board, right? This is from Jeff. Now, I went and checked out Jeff's website because he and I have been going back and forth. And this isn't the name of his company, but his slogan is Wicked Awesome Wiring. Wicked Awesome Wiring. You know what part of the country he's in. Can I get the policy and procedure manual? Thanks. Have to say, I love the podcast. I listen all the time, Jeff. So, Jeff, you make me laugh. That's funny. Thanks, man. Here's one that comes from somebody I can already tell has a lot of wisdom. I'll read you what he had to say, and you'll see what I mean. I wanted to reach out and say thank you. I really appreciate the end of your podcast the other day where you apologize. I learned a lot from you doing that, something I know I should be doing. I'd like to talk to you sometime next week to do a consult or figure out what's going on. I really enjoy the podcast, and I need to find a way to change my mindset. Thank you, Dom. And that comes from a gentleman named Casey. Thank you, Casey. And I know Casey's a wise guy. He has wisdom. Wisdom's different than smart. Wisdom comes from that level of self-confidence that's able to say, I need to know something and I got to go find the answer. Wisdom comes from having short answers, not long ones, which, by the way, automatically disqualifies me. But Casey, I don't want to take away from your comments here. Thank you very much for sending that in. And since that's happened, we have arranged for a meeting time. Anyways, I really appreciate it when you guys do send in notes. Now, Casey brought up something important there where I apologized. I took my eye off the ball. Some of you may not have heard previous episodes where I apologize, so I will do it again. I took my eye off the ball. When people send a text message to me, you know, the cell phone number I talked about here, just send me a text and say, look, I'm looking for this document. Like, what was it? Jeff was asking for the policy and procedure manual, right? So he texts me policy and procedure manual at 315-903-7853. Well, I have people to help me answer those because I get so many of them. I answer a lot of them, but I can't answer all of them. And I'm not making excuses, but my day is packed top to bottom with coaching meetings. So if you send me a message in the morning, it might take me till 4 or 5 at night to get back to you. Wouldn't you rather just have somebody get it back to you? So I talk to my team throughout the day. They tell me what came in and who it is. And then we, get stuff back to people. That's how we run our system here to make sure you get the info you need and you don't have to wait 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month or never get it. And that's what was happening here in my company. And I just sick to my stomach because I make promises here. I don't want to leave anybody hanging. Some of you probably have been left hanging and think Dom doesn't care. Well, I do. We're going through the list right now. And we're getting back to every single person that ever sent us a message to make sure you get the document you need. So Casey heard that message. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And we are working at getting everybody the documents they needed. If you didn't get something you needed, send me a text, 315-903-7853. And we've got a new process. We have new SOPs at my company, and we'll make sure that you get them. But let's simplify and solve a common problem. What we're going to do today is, let me change screens here. I want to feature the profit pack for you. Taunya got me thinking in our interview today about some of the things that we run into as challenges as builders, as GCs, as tradespeople. We're running a crew. Maybe we've got 10, 11 people. Maybe we've got more than that. There comes a point where you've got to reinvent yourself. You're still running the company, but you want to make small changes to reinvent yourself. And so these are some of the tools that we use on a regular basis as coaches to reinvent businesses while they're still running. So one of them is something and these all, there's 5 in this particular pack. So you're going to get it's a folder, a Google Drive folder. There's 5 documents in there. You may have received 1 or 2 of these before, but never as a pack. I just bundled them together this year thinking it's good for you to have it sorted this way. That way, when you pull it onto your own hard drive, you'll have all of them as one reference. And hey, you can see it as myself and the coaches on our team see it, right? So the first one's an Excel spreadsheet, and it's the 1 hour job estimate calculator. Okay. So what that's going to allow you to do is figure out all of your costs. Now, what a lot of people do is they use this to start the conversation in their company about getting in control of their numbers. So if you're at a place where you never have really known your numbers and there's so many numbers to track, it literally goes on to infinity. That in itself is a joke. This will tell you a couple of numbers to go figure out, right? Just a few numbers. If you've got a business partner and you and that other partner have never really had a chance to sit down and talk about the finances without it getting emotional, this is a great way to go. It just says, fill in this box, fill in this box. There's 10 boxes, and the 11th box automatically calculates. But that's the 1 hour job estimate calculator. Why do we use that as business coaches? Well, we use it for different reasons. Number one, to make sure we're charging the right rate in the field for all labor, and make sure that your overheads are in there, your net profit is burned in there. And you have to know that number so that when somebody comes back at you and says, hey, Casey, you're high. Casey, I'm using Casey from a few moments ago. Casey can say, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Can you tell me how far off we are? Because Casey already knows his number is $72 an hour or $172 an hour. But Casey knows that's his number. And what I want you to do is stop listening to people who are telling you your price is high when they have no idea how you actually arrived at the price through cold, hard logic. And that's what this document does. So one of the things it does is it helps you figure out the actual true cost for 1 hour of your company. The other thing it helps you figure out is, what does it cost to introduce waste into your company? So what does it cost to go back or to send somebody to Home Depot or the supplier or somewhere to the lumberyard, the specialty lumberyard, just to get one thing? There's a cost to that. What is that cost? And once you understand that cost, you can then start to make the right decisions, again, based on logic, to change the way you do things in the business. We're just talking about small changes, but those small changes add up, right? So that's just one of the documents in the profit. There's 4 others. That's one of the documents in the profit pack. The other one is something called the Ultimate Get Things Under Control Guide. Now, this is just for contractors. And it's a guide that you would print this off. You would go to a coffee shop, put in your headphones, grab your favorite coffee, face the corner, get a pen, pencil in your hand, and take some notes in the margin, like right on the actual document. But it helps you get things under control. And the reason that this guide exists is because most of us have just evolved the company to where it is right now. Some people listening have bought the company, so they just plop there they are, they're running the business. But most of us have just evolved. And because we've evolved, there's a lot of stuff that's still hanging to us, right? Old systems, old documentation, old ways of doing things that were there when we were really small, but don't serve us anymore as we're bigger. Now that we've got 3, 4, 5 crews, now that we've got 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people, we're still doing some things like we have 1 or 2 people. Why? And so this Get Things Under Control guide is made to get you back in front of the business instead of always chasing it. So that one's really important. It's a PDF. Again, you print it off, go to a coffee shop. You guys hear me say this all the time. Go to a coffee shop, print off the document, face the corner, put in your headphones, and just noodle away at the document. I will say this again, and almost nobody takes me up on this. I don't know what's up. Maybe I'm not saying it enough. But if you send me a selfie, a picture of you having a coffee with one of these printed documents, I'll send you $5. I want to buy your coffee. I don't know how much else I can do, but I need you to do this work for yourself, right? Your crew, you've probably got 3 or 4 crews running right now. They're doing different renos or different roofing jobs, whatever your trade is. They need you to be doing this work because they need to be working in 6 months, 9 months, 9 years. And this is the smart work you do to ensure that you're going to move on in the future. If I can have a small part in that and buy you that coffee so you do the work, I'll do that. So just take a selfie. I mean, it's 2024. You take a selfie, right? Take a selfie and send it to me. Just text it to the same number, 315-903-7853, and then I'll send you $5. It comes as an Amazon gift card. You're going to have to translate that into your own Dunkin' or Tim's or whatever your local coffee place is. But look, I'm trying. That's the best system I've got. By the way, if you have a better suggestion, let me know. Okay, the next item on the list is how to calculate my revenue responsibility per hour. Now, that revenue responsibility per hour doesn't sound very exciting, but that's a way better title than what they call it in school, because it's actually called, you ready for this? Ricardo's Law of Comparative Advantage. chapter 19 in some thick textbook in an MBA course. But here we talk about it as my revenue responsibility per hour. As the leader of the company, I want you to imagine yourself standing on a cliff, like what was that show, The Lion King, right? Holding up the little baby lion cub. That's you standing on the cliff, surveying your domain, which is your HVAC company, your renovations company, your concrete company, your house moving company, whatever it is, right? What are you responsible for as the owner of that business? What I'm really trying to do is give you the logic to be able to say no when certain things are tugging at your sleeves. You just have to be able to say no to some things. Now, you don't say, no, it's not going to get done. What we say is, I'm going to have somebody else do that. That sounds like a Jeremy question. Jeremy's going to take care of that because Jeremy's doing his job at a $40 per hour rate. You're doing yours at a $400 per hour rate when we talk about bringing value to the company. So it explains it more in the document. That's why there's a document. Then we've got the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Planner, which is perfectly timed here for the beginning of the year. We're just barely into the second quarter by the time this episode goes live. So the Healthy, Wealthy, Wise Planner is a grid. It's a very simple grid, and it shows you in your own words how to be healthy, wealthy, and wise in the categories of business, personal, and finance. So it's a really, really nice way to lay out your plans on paper. If you have a business partner, great tool. If you're in a family business, great tool. If you're trying to explain to your spouse what you want to accomplish this year and he or she's never been able to understand it, great tool. If you just need something for yourself to get your thoughts out of your head and on paper, great tool. So that one's very popular. That document's pretty new. It's only been out for 3 months and it's already one of the most popular documents, and it's inside the Profit Pack, which is also one of the most popular downloads itself. So that one gets hit a lot. And then the other one is the Where Are My Blind Spots assessment, which is a construction business reality check. That's the 5th document in the kit. So there's a lot here for you, and it answers the question of how do I get to the next level in my contracting business, in my construction business. We're doing 2 million, but we did 1.8 last year. We're going to do 1.9 this year. We're really not growing. We're kind of going sideways. I feel we could be doing more. I hear you. You need new inputs. I've been stuck in that position myself as well. And the way to get through it is not, let's use the number 2 million. If you're at 1.8 million in sales right now, there's a good chance you're running that business on $1.5 million systems. So the way to get through that is not to say, well, I need to build systems to be a $2 million company. You could do that, but it's kind of a waste of time. What you should be saying is, I want to build systems to be a $5 million company or have the profitability of a $5 million company, depending on your take on things. The reason is that pulls you through that $2 million mark. If all you're trying to hit is 2, you're going to hit 2 just randomly. Give it 3 years and you'll bounce through it or over it. But if you want to aim for it, if you really want to be a $2 million company, you probably got to aim to be a $5 million company because there's a magnetism there. And here's all of that's explained in here. Or if you want, set a time aside to talk to me and I'll walk you through that. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for checking in. I do appreciate your time. You've heard me say this before. I'm not perfect. I keep trying to be better every day. I'm a business owner just like you. I make mistakes, and you know what? They're going to happen. So I just smile, I pick up my socks, lace up my boots. You know what I mean? And I just keep going. This podcast is a thin excuse for the day when you and I can have a glass of wine or a cup of coffee across the table. I look forward to that day. I'll bet you anything it's going to happen. But until then, the podcast I'll have to do. Have a great day. Thank you for checking in. We'll talk to you soon.